Good afternoon. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Father's Day. Hello, 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 everybody.
Hello, everyone, and again, happy Juneteenth, happy Father's Day, and as always, thank you for spending the next hour with us, however you're tuning in. So, I'd like to give my cousin Donya the flowers for today's topic and subject to conversation because this was all you, cousin.
I ain't gonna do nothing but
And
turn it around and give it to somebody else, but it's all good.
I'm giving you flowers. Please take them. Um, So the topic, unfortunately, the guest that we had scheduled for today wasn't able to join us, and today we're going to be talking about some new features that have been added to Ancestry. And before we get into that, I just want to start the show on a positive. Well, we had a positive welcome. We had a positive welcome. It's a wonderful weekend. All those good things. But what I really wanted to start off with was maybe 3 or 4 owners ago. Um, Ancestry had an amazing suite of useful, practical DNA analytical tools that everyone could use and learn something about who their ancestors were, especially if you had brick walls. And that was called DNA circles. And I'm kind of kicking myself now because that was like, Donnie, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer.
Probably, yeah,
It seems forever ago, but
yeah. I'm gonna
I'm
say about 5 or 6 years ago.
about 5 or 6 years. And I'm going to say, hand on heart, that if I had known and my tree was as developed then as it is now, a lot of those DNA circles I would actually understand. And DNA circles did really help me break through one of my the proof that I descended from the German Swiss Sheppey family, and it was a family called Metters, and they were a Mormon family. I had never heard that name before. I had no Mormons in my ancestry in any or ancestral family in any way, shape, or form. I didn't know who they were. Well, cut a long story short, it took me 3 years to work it out. Even with the DNA circle screen grabs that I had, come to find out they were actually descended of a parallel Sheppey family group called the Ankneys. The Sheppies and the Ankneys married multiple times back in Germany and essentially became the same family. And that was one of the outlier proofs that I was descended from the Sheppies. And of course, DNA circles, which was useful and practical, and once you got your head around how it worked, and it was pulled solely from DNA. That was the thing that I loved about it. It had nothing to do with what the information in people's family trees. It was 100% DNA driven.
Hmm.
Replaced with through lines, which is trash. And it just seems that every time Ancestry gets sold and it develops these so called analytical tools, which are really just a form of entertainment, African Americans specifically get less and less. And the reason why I'm singling out African Americans, Donnie and I were having this conversation before we went live. Our ancestry is unique in this country. The way that we have to research our enslaved ancestors specifically, there is hardly any other group in the United States of America that has to research the way that we do, going into inventory, enslavers' inventories, deeds, mortgage papers, insurance papers, plantation logs, sales deed. I mean, you know the plethora of all the different kind of slave business related slavery records there are out there. The only other group that I can think of with any kind of parity would be the New England Native American tribes, tens of thousands of which, if not more, were kidnapped and sold as slaves into the Caribbean.
Yep.
Those tribes also, trying to stitch their family back together would be because of slavery again and colonization would be a difficult thing to do. Um, so, Donnie, I'm going to let you explain. So now that I've done that kind of segue into the show, and I wanted to start on a positive, and we are going to talk very constructively about what we're going to share with you about these new ancestry tools. But I thought it would be a good idea, Donnie, you introduce the tools to me for you to give a summary of the tools and kind of what led you to calling me and us having that conversation.
Oh my God. Okay, so I ain't as positive, and I meant ain't as positive as Brian is, but I will try my best because y'all know me, and I honestly believe that Ancestry, when my phone rings on their line, a red siren goes off, and everybody is just like, it's her, watch your mouth, you know. I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly because Ancestry know that when I'm calling, I'm probably about to cut somebody out. But he is definitely right about everything that he was saying with Ancestry. So there are some new tools on Ancestry, and I don't want us to think that this is just about Ancestry. This is genealogy as a whole. This is history that we've learned and through the eyes of genealogists and things that we've seen as, you know, as far as our research is concerned, and you know where we are, where we were, where we are now, and where we think we might be going. But to start it off with Ancestry, I want to talk about two things. One is the communities. So the communities, this is a new portion of the communities. It's called community inheritance. And basically, do you want me to put it up on the screen, Brian?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll put them on the screen. So one is community inheritance, and that can be found. And I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna do it so y'all can see where to go. So I'm gonna use mine so my mommy won't get mad. Yeah, this is all me. So basically, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to discover your origins, and you're gonna scroll down until you get to this new community inheritance. Now, I found this to be very helpful because number one, it definitely will give you a an idea of where your family originated. I think it's a very helpful tool, and I think it will allow you to see the migration patterns of your family and in the directions that they came from. I think it definitely shows you different things like that. So this is a positive, okay, Brian? It's a positive.
Yes, 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 it
This is
is.
positive. But for me, when it becomes negative is when you go to, and it, oh, let me finish showing. And then it also shows the areas, where the areas are. So you got early Southern US African Americans. This was something that they already had, but now they've gone into a little bit more detail with it, and they showed you where, how far it stretches from which end to the other. I'm going to be very honest with you guys. When I looked at this the other day with one of our other cousins, and let me give a shout out to her in case she's up here, because this show is actually Marie Eaton's fault, because we were talking about some stuff, and we got to this, and so thank you, Marie. But she can also tell you, when I first looked at this outside green was not for me. So they've done something, and now I'm on the outside. I only had the inside green. I only had this part when I first looked at it. My mom had the outside, and now I have the outside part. But it just really kind of goes into more detail about your overall communities and where they are and things of that nature. So it's all helpful, and it's all good. The thing that I don't like though is this, and I'm going to go back to that. Normally, you go into your settings to find this particular thing, and you go down to visibility, and this all ethnicity, regions, and community thing. Now, if you manage a lot of kids like me and Brian and other family members that work with us do, certain things you're going to see because you're a paid member of Ancestry, whereas people who are not paid members, they're not going to see it. That is something that we just learned this a few minutes ago. Because, or if you have access to certain people's stuff, you're going to see things, because we just learned that, me and Brian, while we were looking at his stuff. But you know that area when you're looking at your DNA and somebody pops up and they have just the area of where their DNA is and it's showing just your percentage match with them, and then everything else at the bottom is zero for them. This is where Marie said, this is how this happens. Now, I don't agree with her on that. I don't agree. She said if you click the income ethnicity regions area, they'll only see the 0%. You'll only see the percentage that you share in those areas. This is got to be one of the worst things, in my opinion, for Ancestry to have, because once again, it blocks African Americans from finding their paths to their families.
If I can jump in, remember, because when I hadn't seen this before. I was before Donya told me about it, and we stepped through it together in real time. Mine automatically was defaulted to hide. So it was that the one that you've just highlighted now. Anyone who would look at my communities will only see the communities that we shared in common, because what's now highlighted, that one on the bottom, that in common, that's the one that was the default setting. So I'm willing to wager that a lot of Ancestry customers who haven't even gone into their settings, don't even know about this part of settings or any of this, don't realize that they too, their accounts have been Ancestry set this feature to this to only show communities that two or more people share in common.
And that may be,
You have to actually select all ethnicity regions and communities to show all of them, whether you match or not.
and that may be true. However, and this is where Donya is negative. Ancestry does not have the best or greatest track record when it comes to support of African American researchers. This is not a secret. We definitely see this on a regular basis on how they handle things. And with that being said, I have no reason to think that the reason why they did it that way is to help stop certain things for certain people. Did I say that properly, Brian?
I think that's a little too vague. So I'll say it because
I'm trying because you know me, I
because
will.
I'm in a mood, and if anyone wants to have a go at me on Twitter, have at it, because I got time for this one.
Oh, we got the
So
other Brian. Hey,
this harkens back to the day. I'm going to give just a little bit of historical context. This harkens back to the day when Ancestry decided to lower CMs or matches, and not just a little. They lowered it a lot. The first people to protest were actually, ironically, the first people who noticed, who knew that they would be disproportionately negatively affected by it. And that was African American genealogists. And it wasn't just myself, and it wasn't just Donya. I mean, I'm not going to name names. Many of you are actually watching this show now. We're talking preeminent African American genealogists, the length and breadth of the United States of America, all in unison shouted out, you are going to hurt us by doing this. Because if the average African American has 25% non African DNA, and I'm just going to say it, it could be European, Native, I don't care what it is. We're talking that probably got introduced, the lower the amount that you have, the further back in time that happened, which means that every one of those DNA matches that you have is important. You're trying to figure out where your Scottish or your Swedish or your Danish ancestry came from circa 1710, DNA is one of the strongest ways. I can at least point to the person that's responsible for that, and then you can start researching that person to get their records and see if you can find your family there. So that kind of kicked it off. Ancestry ignored it. Now there were white genealogists who immediately they got it. They got it. They didn't even need African American genealogists to explain it. They're like, hang up, wait a minute. That's really going to hurt people.
Mhm.
Um, that's when a lot of other Caucasian genealogists were like, well, those small CMs are unreliable and it's a lot of wasted stuff and false matches and la da 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 da. Well, a goodly portion of them, when Ancestry finally did lower the CMs, started howling. I would probably say between 6 months to 18 months, there was a bit of a curve there. Oh, wait a minute. I can't see my 6% CM matches. I can't see my 5.8% CM matches. I really
Mm,
need those. My ancestors were poor and in Kentucky, and I need to see all the people that I match. Well, you should have spoken up when everyone else was shouting instead of telling us those small CMs were false. That part.
so y'all thought it
I
was
get
me?
tired of I get tired of African Americans always being dismissed. Like we don't know what we're talking about.
Y'all thought it was me that was just crazy and saying stuff. Y'all just caught a little taste of Brian. So with that being said, since we going there, that was the whole thing. I'm not. This is why I'm not a fan. This is why the red sirens go off when they ring the phone, because I catch them in this stuff all the time. I'm constantly contacting them and asking them, why can't we do this and why can't we do that? The bottom line is that that screen that I just showed y'all, because those communities are not showing up, that others, the original screen, the first screen that I showed y'all with the maps, we now can't pinpoint who the people are. We got the map, but we don't have the people. So now you're
Yep.
giving us another way, another thing that we have to go over, climb over, another mountain, because we never have molehills to climb over. We have
Uh-uh.
mountains. It's consistent mountains that we always have to climb over in order to figure out or find out who our family is. Do we make it over those mountains? Yes, we do. This is why I love Black people. But in the same instance, why do we have to continue to keep doing this? Why do we have to continue to keep fighting to get what we need in order for us to find our families? Why are we different? Why is it that I'm not supposed to be able to find my family, but everybody else can find theirs?
And I'm going to jump in and say, but they spend hundreds of millions of dollars creating fancy advertisements pitched specifically to African Americans, promising you can use the platform to find your family. Yet they make
Yeah.
it more difficult for you to find all of your family. You
And
can
in
find your
defense and in defense of everybody, and then when they do make those things and do those things and people do take those DNA tests, they do not tell them that those DNA tests are like paternity tests, because I have come across several family members that were like, I didn't even know this was going to happen. I didn't even know that I was going to find family. I was just looking at my ethnicity. This is amazing. Some people were happy about it, but I could name two that were not. I could name two that were actually thinking about suing, because they was like, I didn't know this. You mean to tell me that my grandmother, my grandparents, the people that raised me are not my grandparents? Can you imagine the hurt, the feeling, the pain that these people went through? But you don't tell them that part. You just tell them, oh, find out where your family came from. And that's it. Meanwhile,
just
you're not giving me everything that I need to know to actually find out where my family came from. So,
because
yeah,
I'm telling you, some of these results, thankfully I was spared. Well, no, I can't say that because of an unexpected non-paternity event with the recentish 3 generations of my family. Um, but people can become psychologically harmed. Okay, if you take a medical exam or a medical test, your doctor is going to sit you down and explain the procedure.
that's
What
right.
could go wrong? What the hopeful outcome is going to be, but what could be discovered and what could go wrong
That's
while
right.
you're doing the test. They don't put you in an MRI without any preparation. They prepare you to go into the MRI.
That's right.
So why is DNA testing like the Wild West, where it's like, oh, just spit into a tube and learn your ethnicities, which aren't even accurate to begin with, but that's another show for another day. Um, it's presented as edutainment, but it has real world
Hey,
implications
that's right.
and after effects.
That's right. That's exactly right. So this is the DNA portion. Now we also have things like, we're here. It's Juneteenth. And Lucretia, she hit it right on the head. It's all about money, and it is.
Well, the further the ancestry gets away from its original founders, I mean, yes, the founders needed to make money. They sunk a huge load of money into it, so they needed to recoup it back. But at least they were developing useful tools. Every time this company gets sold and another hedge fund management company buys it, it's just money, money,
Money,
money,
money.
money.
That's it. That's it. I know somebody who does surveys for them, and one of them, she said there was one survey that actually asked her, how much money would you spend to get DNA from a dead person? Y'all look out for it.
And I don't even know how that's possible because
Right.
to exhume, well, okay, there's two scenarios. That's not a word. I can't think of what the proper funeral language is on that one. But that requires a court order. You
Yeah.
can't just decide, oh, I'm going to dig up great great grandpa or
Oh, let me
grandma.
go. Let me
To
go get my granddaddy's information real quick. I'll be right back. That's how that is. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go dig my granddaddy up. Sure, you got
and
time.
if it's and if it's a recently deceased person, meaning the body's still in the hospital or in the house or wherever, you still need to get permission.
Yep.
You can't just do it.
You can't just do it. But that is a question. That is a question. Chrissy has said that
Now,
would be criminal, and it is criminal. It is criminal, but
which
they're
even
actually asking a survey. That is a survey question.
But even by asking that question, for people who aren't aware of the law or that there are legal ramifications to that, you can take DNA from a dead person.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It would be really easy to come away with that thought.
yeah, yeah,
Man,
yeah.
that's why I'm being cremated. That's all I gotta say about that.
You like you can't get nothing from my ashes. Don't even touch them. I know that's right. I know that's right.
Not
But
one.
the other thing is that as we go through this Juneteenth holiday, this is the third annual year for it being a federal holiday. For those that don't know that, and every year I see something different. Every year people are talking about what it is, what it was, why it's the way it is, and one of my biggest issues is that people really don't understand how it came to pass. They don't understand the whole thing of it. And that's a problem to me, especially for black people.
I wish I had it could share my screen for this one. I forgot to save it. People are tweet. It's usual. It happens right before Juneteenth every year. There are Caucasian people out there going, Juneteenth is a made-up holiday. You already have Martin Luther King Day. Why do you need to have Juneteenth? But it's a made-up holiday. It's a made up thing.
The thing that gets me though, and this may take my black card, um, I'm kind of in agreement with that. Kind of. And the only reason why I'm in agreement with that is because of when freedom actually happened. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to let you continue, but I have to quickly say, but has it?
Well,
We're still fighting
we're
for
still
civil rights.
fighting. You're absolutely right. We are still fighting. But overall, it's when it happened. When we really think about, and this is the part that bothers me. This is the education part. So if people who are on here and don't know that, I need you to write this down. I need you to listen to me, write it down. Because Emancipation Proclamation was done in 1863. It took 2 years for everything to actually go through. Why did it take that long? Because they had to get a certain number of states, I believe it's two-thirds of the states, to agree to push it into law. It took 2 years for that to happen. And it finally happened December 7th, 1865. Now, Juneteenth is in the summer of 1865. So these things weren't in they weren't in the coordinated as far as timing was concerned. as far as when the general came to Galveston and told them, hey, did you know you were free? If you're going to celebrate this holiday, celebrate it knowing what it is. It is
Well,
it is a good it's a holiday, and it should be one that should be celebrated. Look at it like most look at Christmas, because don't nobody know when Jesus Christ was born. If you are a Christian and follow that faith, no one really knows when he was born. You got people that come with the, oh, how they know it was cold. It wasn't no snow on the ground. Well, y'all, they were in Egypt right by the equator, so it's never snow on the ground, or or things like that. But it was a date that was chosen, that they decided to use to say that this is the holiday we're going to celebrate the birth of this man. And that was it. That's how it should be looked at. Nobody knows. We were not there. We were not there.
historically speaking, I'm going to throw a little wrinkle into what you just said. That is true. What you said is absolutely true about the states that existed at that time. There was a whole other group of enslaved people that got liberated later than that. And
Yes,
those were
they
the
did.
ones that were held by the five civilized tribes.
Yep.
The US, the federal government had to do a completely separate treaty with the
Yep.
five civilized tribes for them to give up their enslaved people.
That's right. And that's why I want people to really understand the overall meaning of Juneteenth. That's why I said write this down. Because once you get it, then you can teach it to your kids and they can get it and they can understand it and take it back to their school. Because my daughter did that a couple of times with
Mhm.
certain things that I told her. They
I
would try
think
this stuff with her and she would look at them like, no, that's not what my mommy said.
mhm.
You know?
I think maybe instead of attaching it to a specific, obviously it needs to be attached to a specific day so people can get the day off from work and celebrate. But rather than make that the hard and fast date that people were freed from the bondage of slavery, celebrate the fact that freedom from slavery was an ongoing process that was eventually successfully completed, with some major exceptions.
Right.
Notably in Texas, there were people who did not hear about emancipation and thought that they were enslaved well into the 1970s.
That's right.
As crazy as that sounds.
That's right. That's right. And let's not forget, Mississippi just ratified it for real in 2013. Please remember that. Please remember that.
So
And you're not gonna sit here and tell me and they say, oh, I forgot to sign this piece of paper. That's a lie. And you can't do that. I forgot. Nah.
so while we're talking about history, if we can go into the other feature of ancestry that I
Yes.
was talking about.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember what that was called before
The Explorer.
I bring. Okay, so we can keep talking about this as I bring up my first. Okay, well, I'm going to bring up Moses Williams first. I just
Okay.
have to remember how to do this shared screen.
It
Share.
should be right up underneath your
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
hmm Share window. Share entire screen. Is that
There you
showing
go.
okay?
Yep, there it is.
Okay. So I noticed this for the first time today. This is called Explore. And it's a reiteration of something that Ancestry already have. I think they just made it face forward more than what they were doing before. So you click. Donya had to talk me off the ceiling on this one. So those of you who have been longtime followers of the show know that Moses Williams is Donya, my four times great grandfather, who was born in slavery,
One of them.
lived to see freedom because he died in 1884. So he had a good couple of years in freedom. He was born in Virginia, lived in North Carolina, and then in various parts of South Carolina before he died. So remember, this man was a slave. He never lived in Raleigh. Now, a newspaper mentioned something about Raleigh, but it was never definitive that he ever lived there. Donnie and I and other cousins have spent years trying to figure out where this Raleigh, North Carolina thing came from and can't find it. Now,
Oh no,
Moses
I figured
did.
it out.
Mhm.
It was a paper. It was just
No,
shared in.
I'm saying it was a paper, but there was no paper proof. There was no proof that he actually ever lived there. They just wrote it.
Yeah, it was
The
just
iron,
shared there. It was just like a
yeah.
social media share. Wasn't like just like
So
social media.
yeah. So he ironically ended up having descendants who lived in Raleigh, but he did not. So why are there all these things? And there's nothing in our trees, in any of our trees, that would make Raleigh a place where he that had any association for Moses, nor York County, South Carolina. There is no paper proof that he had any. He definitely didn't have anything to do with York, South Carolina in 1870. 1870, he's on a census return in Barnwell, South Carolina. So don't know what this is all about. Like I said, if you're going to give us things that's supposedly genealogically related or possibly useful, make it useful. And a lot of this is about Caucasian people. What was happening with black people during this time? If you want to teach history, this should be balanced between white history, black history, Asian history, all the peoples that were living here in the United States, so that emphasis isn't placed on one ethnic group over any other. And I'm looking at a whole lot of one specific ethnic group, and I'm even willing to say, even down to the religion, is being reflected here, except for this one, the Quaker, Mr. Quaker over here. Now, Moses did live in Newbury for a spell. We strongly suspect that there are probably older children of his that were also in Newbury. They were living very near Quakers in the part of Newbury that there were, but there was no known direct connection between the two. Barnwell, 1817. Who's Henry Hudo and what does he have to do with Moses Williams in 1817? Who is he? Why is he there? Why is that photograph? That has nothing to do with Moses or his history or his family history. The Hudos didn't even marry into the enslaving Williams family. Why is he on Moses's? There's nothing historical in here. That's a photograph from someone's family tree.
Most of
This
my
is
photographs are, yeah. That's what all of this stuff is. Real quick, Brian Henry asks, is this under new tools or are just is it just a
no,
basic
it's
subscription?
there. It's right
What it
there.
is, if you go
You
to
have
your
facts.
profile of any of your, yeah, if you go to the profile of anybody on your tree, right to the looking at your camera, looking at your screen to the right, you'll see the word explore. When you click on explore, this is what pops up. So when I was trying to talk Brian off the ledge, go back up, Brian. I was trying to, you see those whites, the white little boxes? Yeah,
Here,
those. I tried
you
to,
keep going.
be a little forthcoming. I was like, well, maybe if we click on one of those, it'll be more about them. It's not.
No, and again, Newton, Kansas. Are you kidding me? First of all, he was dead a year. He'd been in the ground for a year by 1885. No connection to Kansas in any way, shape, or form. Red Oak, South Carolina, yes, that was in Barnwell. He actually lived there. That's where he was in 1870. Out of any of this stuff, that was the only applicable thing. Well, Newberry and say he died in Barnwell in 1884, so those were also applicable. But there is not. I'm going to quickly scroll through before I say it, and then have to retract it. There's nothing about African Americans in here. Nothing. Nothing about slavery or emancipation or how important emancipation was. You want to talk about South Carolina? Talk about how South Carolina tried to have the most racist state constitution twice in the 1800s, purposefully trying to. You don't see that here, but I see random photographs of people who happen to be alive at that time
Now,
with
what's funny is that when I'm looking at it on my screen, I got totally different stuff from you.
okay.
I'm actually looking at it on my screen, and they got something from Charlotte, North Carolina, based on the life of Moses Williams, 1917. It is a
What
black
part?
man,
What
but it,
part of his life, though?
what part of his life?
What part of his
Exactly.
life?
What part of this have to do with his life? So again, these little stories, and I think this explorer came from the stories, because notice the stories are gone. Because remember
Yes.
they had the whole thing that was like the stories, and black people, people of color, explain this don't have nothing to do with my family. So why do y'all have it here? So
So,
eventually they removed it. I'm
so
thinking
all, so all they did is rebrand it.
they
So they did.
rebranded it.
They didn't listen. Ultimately, they did not listen.
Right.
They took off stories, rebranded it as what is this called again?
Explore.
Explore, and then Life Story. You get the same stuff, some of it in Life Story too.
Hmm.
So this, I want to show you an example of a free person of color, and hopefully, again, this. Let's stick with Rebecca because you're more familiar with Rebecca than Martha Bottom. So this is a free woman of color who came from a long line of free people of color going all the way back to Virginia, well before the Revolutionary War. So that's Rebecca Bug. There's Edgefield, which is where she lived. I don't know about Bird. Well, I think Bird Creek was kind of close to where they were living. So that, that's fine. Um, but then we get to this one, slaveholder. Rebecca Bug was not a slaveholder. I was getting salty and in my feelings. And then I realized it wasn't this image wasn't put on Rebecca Bug. It was put on a man called Ezekiel Perry, who had nothing. And when I say he had nothing to do with Rebecca Bug or any of the Bug family, he had nothing to do with them. So why is this on her Explorer? I didn't need Ancestry to tell me that there were a lot of enslavers in Edgefield. I've been researching Edgefield for over 30 years. I think I kind of worked that one out for myself. And it's, again, not being directly applicable or really kind of providing any genealogically useful information. There is nothing in here about free people of color. I mean, if you wanted to be um, topical about Rebecca's life, put something in here about free people of color. What was it like to be a free person of color in South Carolina, in Edgefield at that time period? But again, even though she came from very mixed ancestry, I'm seeing a whole lot of Caucasian faces that really had nothing to do with her.
Absolutely nothing.
Jane Deering Pickens Wally had nothing to do with Rebecca Bug, or her husband, or her kids. Dave the Potter just happened to live in the same county as Rebecca Bug. There was no connection with Dave the Potter. And it just goes on and on and on. And I'm just gonna. Oh, the last one I wanted to show you, and you can show your mom. And again, this is Juneteenth, African American history. Okay. I'm gonna bring up my grandmother. That's what I got.
I ain't gonna show
Problem
my
that I'm
mama.
having the problem that I'm having with this, I call this the DeSantistan or desantification of American history. This approach of a so-called white Christian dominant culture is not applicable to everyone. It isn't. My grandparents didn't live on Rittenhouse. They didn't live anywhere near Rittenhouse. They lived in 47th Place, Northeast, Washington, D.C. So what is that? So what is this doing here? Um, my grandmother and Donya's mother lived through an incredibly rich but turbulent period of American history. There is nothing in here about the Civil Rights Movement. There is nothing in here about the March on Washington. There is nothing in here about Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or the Black Panthers or any of the major periods of Black history in the mid to earlier 20th century reflected on my Black grandmother's Explore section of this website. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of Black history that was going on. There's nothing about the Tulsa massacre. That happened when my grandmother was a little girl. She would have heard of it. None of that's in here. We have a wedding photograph. They could have pulled my grandmother's wedding photograph because it's on her page. No, we get this one. Lovely couple. Lovely couple. I have nothing against this photograph in and of itself, except it's not my grandmother.
Oh
It's not my
Lord, you got me
grandmother.
cracking up over here.
What was that other crazy? Where's the wedding announcement in the newspaper? Oh, that was your mother's.
That was my
Oh no,
mom.
here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Oh yeah, they had
1948.
the same one.
1948, Washington, D.C., my black grandmother would not have had her wedding announcement anyway in the newspapers because newspapers were racist and segregated. She would not have had a, not in 1948, she would not have had a wedding announcement. Are you kidding me with this?
Get him, Brian.
As a matter of fact, this just might be a really kind of dark photo. No, again,
That's a white
oh,
man.
finally, we get a civil war, but white man. Ancestry, do better. Be better, do better. Oh, we finally get an African American, and I have no idea. Well, this person may actually be a relation,
That's the guy that was also he's on my mom's too.
but there's no explanation about why this photograph that I have never seen in the entirety of my life, nor come across it in any of the kind of cousin trees that I have access to. Why is this man photographed on my grandmother's page?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it just keeps going like that. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Well,
Be better,
well,
be better.
you said do better. Well, the other
Because
thing
I'm
that I
telling you, if I had
had,
been in the focus group, if I had been in this focus group, if this was focus group, I would have torn this to shreds.
right.
Because
And
time and money would have. Mhm.
Shelly asks,
Go
"Are they hints?" And they're not hints, Shelly. No,
no.
they're just things that are scrolled underneath your family members' names. We have absolutely no reason for them to be there. Go look at that. I want everybody who's up here to check your trees. Go look at your tree. Go look at a profile. You can look at your own personal profile and click on that button. Click on that one that says explore. And when you click on that one that says explore, you'll see it. You'll see it for yourself. Yeah, yeah. It's crazy. But Brian had brought up something, and I'm gonna go get this. I was trying to get my son to do it, but I have to go get this, and I want to show you what I did. So
While Donya is getting that, again, I would just strongly encourage you to check out this explore feature on your own family
right,
pages.
right. So another thing that I want to get into is our history, what we fight for, why we're not covered, things of that nature, and what we need to really start. We need to start doing. So my mom turned 85 this year, and we did something really special for her. She said she wanted to go and do a she wanted to do a spa thing. She wanted to go through the whole spa thing and have the massage and this, that, and the third. Well, we didn't want to put her in the world because we still trying to protect her from COVID, even though she ended up getting it anyway. But nevertheless, at that time, we was still trying to protect her from that whole from COVID. And so what we did was we decided to bring her here to my house, and we did it here. And we had her children, her daughters, her granddaughters, her great granddaughters, and her great great granddaughter all in one house. She got food, she got massages, she got nails done, facials. We just went all out. In the process of getting this party together for her, you know how when you're trying to do things and make stuff possible for, you know, like Brian was saying, papers and information about us in the papers and things like that. I could not find one, not one, nothing that gave information about what was going on when she was born, the year she was born. That included Black folks. Never did. So I made it myself.
So such a great idea.
And I'm trying to make sure you guys see it. Basically, what I did was I made this whole picture of my mom's. I made this picture. Matter of fact, I think I have it on my thing. But I made it into a newspaper article. And when I made it into this newspaper article, I really just kind of put her birthday. I don't feel like looking for it. I called it the Yale Times. I put it was her birthday. And I did things like the year she was born. Every article that was done was about black people. So there was one that said Secretary X comes to aid of Marian Anderson in controversy at DAR. So first things first, I did not know that the DAR Marian Anderson thing was going on at that time. I need y'all to think about that. Marian Anderson sung on the Lincoln Memorial steps during the March on Washington. The March on Washington was done in the 60s. My mother was born in 1939. Look at the span of how long this was going on for her. And she continued to work through it, go through it, everything like that. Then there was another one where it was called, it says, Swing Version of Mikado Makes Big Hit in New York. You guys, I read that article, and they literally said in the article, if the creators of that particular play was alive, they would be furious. They actually said that they were rolling in their grave because this play was put on by a whole bunch of black people and it turned out to be a hit in New York. So these were the things that I went to go look for, and I went to go find, and I went to try to do. We have to really start supporting ourselves, our families, putting our information out there. We got to stop talking about it and start being about it. We can't just keep saying these things and then sitting back and waiting for somebody else to do it. Everything about ancestry that we've talked about today, unfortunately, you've had those people who do not want to be related to black folks. They're the ones that contacted Ancestry. They're the ones that got what they wanted. We didn't say anything. All we did was complain to. I said, well, I'm gonna say y'all didn't say anything. My red light, my siren was going on. I don't want to be the only one with the siren. I want everybody to have a siren. I want all of y'all to have a siren. I want the siren. I want them to flag not just me, flag Brian, flag Yolanda, flag Shelly, flag Andrew. I need everybody to be flagged because that's the only way we're going to be able to make this overall change. We can't be okay with what's going on. And unfortunately, that's where we are. All we do is just talk about it and don't say nothing.
Well, again, and so I don't. I mean, what is the answer? Coming out, a DNA testing company that's either majority black owned, entirely black owned, that does autosomal DNA. That because the difficulty is the thing that keeps pulling is people that keep asking me why don't you just leave Ancestry? And I'm like, trust and believe, I would do it in a heartbeat because I hate them that much at this
You
point
and me both.
because they just irritate my nerves to such a degree that if there was something comparable to go to, I'd go to it. But
Mm-hmm.
you're leaving all of those DNA matches that we have behind, and in a way, kind of having to start from scratch. That's the only thing that keeps me on Ancestry, to be perfectly honest.
And Gwen just asked that question of what you just said, and unfortunately, no, there isn't. There is not a DNA website that intentionally. Well, let me rephrase that. My heritage probably comes close to it. And the
True.
reason and the reason why I say that is because my heritage, they cover everybody. They're more international than, you know, domestic. So they're covering all kinds of DNA, and they not hiding nothing with this. They don't, or at least they don't seem to be.
Well, again, they are an owned company who, Jewish people, marginalized people with a horrific history of their own. So I would say that if any other kind of DNA company was inclined to not throw those kind of barriers and play shenanigans, it probably would be my heritage.
Yeah, yeah. I think my heritage is probably the one that actually does is probably the closest. Um,
And as Charles Holman said, they also have awesome DNA analysis tools, and they
oh
are
my God,
proper.
they
It's
do.
they're not entertainment DNA tools; they are actually DNA analytical tools.
The way I wish they had the access to the way I wish they had the access to the records that Ancestry has, if they did, because they don't have that
Well,
access like that.
you know what? I think I'm gonna give this an experiment for the next 2, maybe 3 months. I'm gonna focus much more on my heritage DNA results and use family search, and specifically the family search catalog search function. Because remember, there's stunning data sets in find a search catalog, not the record search, the catalog search.
Yeah,
Um,
but you got to do so much work, and I think that's where.
I know. But maybe it's time for me to stop being lazy. Just being able to just simply easily attach records to a tree in Ancestry. If Ancestry wants my money, they're gonna have to be better and do better. They're gonna have to step up and see that Black people in this country have a completely different genealogical journey than anyone else.
I mean, yeah, that's right. That's right. So, in the closing minutes of this show, where do you think we're going, Brian?
In terms of,
As far as Black people are concerned, what directions do you think we're going to be? What changes? What do you think our
ooh,
future is
I,
holding?
I, we have to survive this upcoming election because I am not looking in any crystal ball until the final vote and the electoral vote's been counted and we know what we're dealing with. If it goes one way, if it goes towards Biden, then we could plan for that future and kind of talk about what that would look like. But if it goes to the other guy, you can forget all that.
So you don't think we need to make a plan if it does go to the other guy again? I mean, it's got to be something because we already know
You,
the other guy is when.
you can't beat fascism. It's what I said. It's like what I said to you on the phone. Black people specifically need to pay attention, and Spanish-speaking people too. Calling you out as well. We know what fascism, a white Christian nationalist form of fascism, looks like. It was called slavery. It was called the Jim Crow. It was called the Black Code Laws if you were a free person of color, because free people weren't really free. They were free, but they weren't white free. If you want to know what fascism's going to look and feel like, read history, because that's what they've got planned for us. You can't fight. There were good German people in Germany that weren't Nazis. They couldn't fight back. Heck, even the French, who hated the Vichy government, the collaborators with the Nazis, there weren't enough of them to actually overthrow them on the once you get that fascist in and they get the army and the military behind them and all their apparatchiks, it's a hard thing to get rid of. So I think we need to kind of see me, I think maybe in that vein, Black people do need to actually have that dinner table conversation, as uncomfortable as it's going to be. If
Yeah,
Trump gets elected, what we going to, what are the plans? I have my plans. I have my plans. I've made those plans.
you leaving, Brian?
I'm out.
I mean, I wish I could, but unfortunately, I don't want to live nowhere else, and
I
that and I don't want to live anywhere else because of people like Moses. He didn't run. He didn't
listen.
leave.
My ancestry goes. Our ancestry, but I'm speaking about mine specifically, goes back to the 1600s and beyond that with my Pamunkey, Jacomini, and Powhatan ancestry. But you know
Yeah,
what? I'm not fighting for a country that will not fight for me. Not doing it. If this country actually fought for non-white rights as much as it fights for the other side, I'd stick it out and I'd fight. But you know what?
They
We need to
they
put.
fight against. You're absolutely right. They definitely, it's a struggle for people of color in every way. And the sad thing is that it's a struggle for people
They
of
do it for
color.
a little. They do it for a little while, and then they revert back to their bad
Right.
behavior.
Right. And we have, and then there's a then but the what makes me feel sad is that that struggle is within ourselves. Like, we can't even, Terry Burke said we have to be a collective. Unfortunately, there are actually some people out here that do support the other guy that are of color. For the life of me, I don't understand why. I don't see why they can't hear what I'm hearing or see what I see. I don't know what it is that's going on with them, but nevertheless,
You always have that percentage of people within the population. Jewish people had other Jewish people sell them out to Nazis. There's always self-interest or a degree of self-loathing
yes,
behind
but
it.
it's high. It's high with us. And
Mhm.
for me, it's been like that, in my opinion, in my research, it's been like that since the Civil Rights Act was finally passed. Everybody thought we made it, and they gave up and they stopped fighting. That's when the fighting really stopped. And they
Mm.
laid down and they were like, we're good, we're okay, yay. And
It's
then meanwhile, you got all this going on in the background. You got stuff that's starting to happen all over again. You got things that's starting to show itself up. Y'all know the draft that the House just passed the law, just passed for the draft to come back. It got to go to the Senate now. In case y'all didn't know that, that's what's happening. So
so
it's just several things.
one of the perfect movies to watch is actually Django Unchained because you have three overarching types. You have the rebel, who's Django. I'm burning it all down, literally burning it down. He's the Nat Turner of the
He's
film.
done.
You have Stephen, the major domo, who would sell every other black person on that plantation out to save his own neck and to get ahead, even if getting ahead meant just accepting the scraps off of the master's table. Then you have the head cook slash housekeeper, who does not, you get the sense the woman, if she could be free, she would be free, but she's always cautioning Django's love interest, girl, dial it back. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have the power you think you have. Just dial it back and play it like this instead. So she's the house, the cook's not Steven, but she's not Django. She just sits right there. And for me, that's the three large overarching type of people: the revolutionary, the rebel, the one who will sell anyone out. I want to say a name of a South Carolina governor, not governor, senator, but I'm going to be good and I'm not going to do it.
Oh,
That
his
part.
name already been said. Tim Scott, I got you. It's already been
That part.
posted. But yeah. So anyway, guys, we are at the top of the hour, and we gotta go. But this has just been a great show, and I want y'all to sit and think about, replay it, play it for your children, do whatever it is you need to do to start putting that fire underneath not just yourself, your family, and everything. Enjoy your holiday, enjoy the Juneteenth weekend, and enjoy Father's Day. We love you guys.
Take care.
All right.
Bye bye.